D's, what up, man? Ed, what's going on? J Bug, you on early tonight. You make sure you ain't forget tonight. Hey, mama, you let these guys get on before you tonight. Big Dre, what's going on? Cave Greaves, what's happening, man? I see you take pictures, Cave, if I'm saying your name right. DM me about the photographs, man. Big Maul, what's good? All right, it's about that time. Welcome to the Positive Impact Podcast, where we talk about all topics relevant to the game that I love. I am your host, Terrell Dozier, and tonight's guest is Georgia State University men's head basketball coach and now friend of mine, Mr. Rob Lanier. OG,
What's happening, brother?
what's going on with you?
Not much, man. Just taking it one day at a time like everybody else now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, right off the rip, shout out to Jarvis Hayes who just got up on here. Um,
Oh, yeah. What's
yeah,
up, bro?
I didn't realize Jarvis is coaching with you, right?
Yeah. We got the whole staff coming in right now.
Okay,
Hmm.
that's what's up, man. So, first question that we always got to ask is, how you and your family are doing.
Yeah, we're doing great, man. It's actually, I got two teenagers,
Mm,
so normally they ain't got time for us. And, my son's getting ready to go off to college, and we're a little bit anxious about, the time frame when he's going to get to go. And then my daughter, was here. So we've had some unexpected quality time with them that me and my wife are trying to cherish. So it's
absolutely,
so far it's actually been a blessing in disguise for us.
absolutely. So, during this quarantine, you and I personally have struck up a relationship. I mean, one that I value very much from a mentoring standpoint. So let's get right into it, man, and let's talk about growing up in Buffalo and how you fell in love with the game.
Oh man, you know what? I don't know exactly when it started, but I had a knack for dribbling the ball when I was young. And when I was in third grade, I went to public school 62 on the east side of Buffalo, and the phys ed teacher was a guy by the name of Romeo McKinney. He coached at South Park High School. You ever see the 30 for 30? Everybody hates Christian Laettner,
Yeah,
whatever they
Park
called
School.
it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What? they show Nichols High School is
Yeah.
where he went, and they show a deal where uh, they're playing against South Park High School, and there's a fight breaks out, and you know that's the school I was zoned for, and
Okay.
the head coach from that school, Romeo McKinney, was my phys ed teacher at my elementary school, and what he would do is he would make everybody else play kickball or whatever other things that a phys ed teacher would do, and he would take me and my man Gordy to a side hoop and work with us on our games because he
Right.
saw something in us. And he had such a big reputation in the area, and he was such a charismatic man that the fact that he took an interest in us really was a real boost of confidence for me at that age, that Romeo McKinney thought I was going to be good.
Okay.
And then when I was 10, I joined the Maston Boys and Girls Club on the east side, and that was tremendous too because of the men that worked in there were guys that played college ball. There were great college players that came through there, Lester Rowe, guys that, from that area. Lester Rowe was the Atlantic 10 Player of the Year at West Virginia. So I was in an environment at that boys club where really everything that the values that I have as a man and as a coach, they stem directly from my experience at the Maston Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
Just everything about competition, work ethic, the integrity of the game. I got it from inside that building, and then, so that's where a lot of guys who grew up in that boys club are still connected. We consider ourselves alumni of the Boys and Girls Club, and so it's a deep thing that had a real impact on me growing up. The Maston Boys and Girls Club. Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously, great high school career, and you went on to St. Bonaventure. Now I got to ask this question for my listeners out there. St. Bonaventure's last name Lanier.
Yeah.
Any relation to the great Bob Lanier?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. That's my first cousin.
Okay.
My father and his father were brothers.
Okay.
But I didn't grow up with my dad. So I knew the relation.
Okay.
But for most of my youth, I didn't carry the name Lanier.
Okay.
I grew up as Rob Ferguson.
Okay.
And I didn't have a relationship with my father until 7th grade, going into the 8th grade. I spent the summer, he was living in LA. And I took a trip out to LA and for the first time developed a relationship with my father.
Okay.
And at that, when I was a sophomore in high school, he moved back to Buffalo.
Okay.
And so there was talk about me taking his name because it's a lot to it. But my mom was an illegal alien for a long time. So the name I had wasn't my name, but I didn't have his name either.
Right. Okay.
And so, but I didn't want his name because, first of all, I was just getting to know him and developing a relationship with him. But also, I didn't want people to associate me with Bob Lanier because I didn't really know Bob like that. And so from a recruiting standpoint and all of that, I didn't want anybody to attribute anything that I was doing to him. Just like you're saying, you didn't know we were related.
Right.
I wanted it like that.
Okay.
But my dad got sick as I was young in college. And so I made the change in honor of the relationship that he and I had developed. And so so the connection, it's hard to convince people that, me going there didn't have anything to do with it. Actually had everything to do with, they recruited me hard and it was close to home and it was in the Atlantic 10 and it came down to Rhode Island, Fairfield, and St. Bonnie and Duquesne. Okay. So I chose to stay close to home.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that story. That's not something I knew about. I don't know how often you share it, but that's a great story. That's a great story. I appreciate that. So, obviously you and I talk a lot, but I want you to tell the listeners, you go through, have a great 4-year career at St. Bonaventure's, and then you decided that you want to get into coaching. Tell the listeners and the viewers about how you got your first coaching job.
Well, I think one of the things that helped me along the way is that, I was a decent player. I wasn't a great player by any stretch of the imagination. I averaged 10, 11 points a game as a junior and as a senior in the Atlantic 10 on bad teams. Mm-hmm. So, but when I was a sophomore, we played against Syracuse at the Carrier Dome. So you're talking about Ronnie Cycli, Sherman Douglas, Stevie Thompson, Derek Coleman.
Yeah.
I discovered that night that I wasn't a pro. I actually had a decent game, at 13 points in the game, but the delusion left me that night. I was like, man, these dudes out here are different, So that really started. That's when my coaching career started. My sophomore year against Syracuse. By the time we got to the spring of my senior year, I had really satisfied most of my academic requirements. I had to do just one internship, but I had satisfied all my credits. Mm-hmm. So that semester, I put my resume together. I developed a cover letter, and I sent my resume to just about every school in the country, trying to get a graduate assistantship. And so I didn't wait till my career was over. Mm-hmm. I was on that. I was in the basketball office every day. The secretary let me use the stationery and to send stuff out. And I got lucky that June. I got a call from Jack Armstrong. Jack Armstrong had been the interim head coach that season, my senior year. He was the interim coach at Niagara University. Mm-hmm. And the interim tag got removed that spring. And I got a call from him. I had a reputation in the community. Mm-hmm. We had competed against them. And so I went over and had an interview, and he offered me a job. I was still 21 at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I got an early start on a coaching career with a really, really good guy to learn from in my first job, because he was really organized. And I had a lot of responsibility because, when you got those low major jobs like that, mm-hmm. You just don't have a full staff. You don't have a separate person for, so I had to be the academic coordinator, the strength coach. Mm-hmm. I was taking graduate school classes. And back then, you still did film exchange. We didn't have all of these video capabilities. Right. So you had to do film exchange where you send videos out, they send videos back, and you could also do live scouting at that time. So I could drive to St. Bonaventure and watch them play and do a scouting report. So I was given a lot of responsibility at a young age from a guy who was really organized, and I embraced it. And it really was a great experience for me. Jack Armstrong really gave me my shot.
Absolutely. So now you were at Niagara for 2 years, and then you went back to coach at St. Bonaventure for 5 years before you got a shot at Rutgers. Am I right? Mm-hmm. And then you ended up at Texas in 1999. Yes, so talk about your time at Texas. You were with Rick Barnes, which is obviously a long-lasting relationship that you guys have. Talk about going there. Texas is big-time basketball. Were they in the Big 12 then, or were they still in the SWC then?
No, it was the Big 12. It was
still
in the
Big 12.
It was his second year, and Ricky Stokes. You might remember Ricky Stokes. I don't know exactly how old you are, T, but Ricky Stokes was a point guard. Him and Othell Wilson, great backcourt at University of Virginia. Back when Ralph Sampson was there, they had those great teams, Final Four teams. And Ricky was an assistant at Texas. And in '99, Ricky was named the head coach at Virginia Tech. And and I got a call from Rick after the Final Four, about a week or so after the Final Four, and he had offered me a job on the phone, and I'd never met him. We had never met in person. I thought it was a practical joke at first or something. I didn't know what was going on. And so the first time we met was after he offered me the job, and I flew out to Austin and got off the plane, and he and the strength coach, Todd Wright, who's on the staff with the Clippers now, who's an unbelievable dude, great man and great person to work with, and a great strength coach. He was definitely, for a long time, considered one of the best in the college game. And he had spent the previous 4 years with 76ers. I'm sorry, and before moving with the Clippers this past year. So we had a great staff, and I didn't really know that much about Austin, Texas. I thought it was going to be a typical college town in the Southwest. I didn't realize it was the biggest city in the country without a pro franchise and all of what it had to offer. And so me and my wife got down there and fell in love with the city, with the whole aura of the program. And then I developed a tremendous bond with Coach Barnes, who's one of the best in the country and without question, one of the best people in the profession to work for.
Absolutely. So now talk about like the difference in, does your philosophy change? You know, you're recruiting out of Niagara, you're recruiting out of St. Bonaventure, as opposed to now you're recruiting at a Big 12 school, which is one of the major conferences in the country. Does the philosophy change in your recruiting when you're at, at a bigger school?
I don't know if your philosophy changes, but I do think individually as an assistant, you have to adapt your philosophy to that of the head coach. Mm-hmm. So if you're working for the guy at Niagara, or if you're working for Jim Barron at St. Bonaventure, or the head coach at Rutgers, you have to understand the system, the dynamics of the institution, and what kind of guys he has success with. Not just talent, but what is the makeup of the guys that he's going to be most effective coaching. And so when you get a job, I think a lot of times guys have to learn how to set their ego aside and say, all right, I know what I like. And based on what I like, I still have to learn what's best for him, because that's going to give us the best opportunity to be successful. And so that's a process.
Yes.
And there's some there can be some learning curve there, but you have to go through that process. So, but in terms of having more resources, it doesn't necessarily change what you're looking for players relative to your level that you can get, and you don't want to waste time. Now, obviously, that pool is bigger when you're at a place that has all the resource and the stature of a program like Texas, plus the brand of Texas connected with the brand of a really successful coach like Rick Barnes. Those things together make for a great opportunity. And so, yes, I had to learn him. The reason why, and it didn't take long to learn what he was about, because he was all about toughness and hard work. And it's ironic because I was back on the East Coast watching another kid, and Royale Ivy was on the floor. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if he scored a basket, but he was competing so hard. And based on every conversation that I was having with Rick and what I had known about the teams that he had coached, Providence and Clemson, and he, his first year in the Big 12, they won the regular season. Mm-hmm. So everything about the aura of Rick Barnes said to me that Royale Ivy could play for him. Mm-hmm. And so, Rick had never seen Royale until he got to campus. Right. We flew out and did a home visit and all that, but he had never seen him play. And so I developed some instant credibility with him because now he saw James Thomas, but those were the first two guys I was responsible for bringing to the table. And right away, he thought he and I were connected in terms of, okay, these are the kind of guys I want to coach. Mm-hmm. And so I think early on, we had a synergy as it related to the kind of players that he wanted to coach, that he felt like he could win with.
Absolutely. So you're there for 2 years with them, and 11 years into coaching, you get your first head coaching job at Siena College, and you spent 4 years at Siena as a head coach. Now, as you know, there's a big difference. 6 inches is a big difference on this coaching, on this bench. You know what I mean? 6 inches here, I'm the assistant coach. I'm here to support. 6 inches this way, all the spotlight is on me, and I'm responsible for every win. I'm responsible for every loss and
Yeah.
everything that goes right or wrong in the program. So talk about that situation with Siena. Did you feel like you were ready? Is that why you took it? Or, you know what I mean? Like, explain that how you were, because you were just 10 years, 10 years is not something to, obviously to say, oh, it's only 10 years. You were in the game for 10 years. Were you ready for that head coaching job?
Well, I think at the time you couldn't have told me I wasn't.
Right.
I was competitive. I was confident. But I didn't know what I didn't know. Like you said, moving over and the gravity of the scope of the whole thing, it was different. And I say this to people all the time, like my reputation at that point as a candidate for jobs was moving at one pace. My development as a coach, how I'm going to run a program and being able to absorb everything that comes with the position was moving at a different pace.
Right.
My first job interview was actually at LIU and Niagara back when I was at Rutgers.
Okay.
It's difficult to get head coaching interviews, let alone head coaching jobs, because there's just not that many jobs out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I was 28, I had already done 2 interviews. Now, whether I deserved those interviews or not, my reputation was such that people had saw me as somebody who had a future as a head coach. And so now you get to Texas with Rick Barnes, and the one great thing about Rick is he really loves seeing his guys go out and get head coaching jobs. He'll really try to help you. That's why he was a great guy to work for, because he would be campaigning for you on situations that you didn't even know he was campaigning for. Most guys, if they have a good guy, they just want to keep him for themselves.
Right.
And here's a guy who's out there promoting you and telling everybody that will listen how good he thinks you are. So I got that opportunity probably before I was ready. But again, you wouldn't have been able to convince me of that. And we had our ups and downs in the non-conference my first year. Then we won 9 games in the league. And then we won the conference tournament and went to the NCAA my first year. And so it wound up being a plus. And then the next year we win 21 games and we win 12 games in the conference, and we go to the NIT. We beat Villanova and Providence that year. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't tell me I wasn't on my way to bigger and better things. Right. And then as you get into year 3 and 4, I started realizing how much I had to learn. And so much of the things that I had to learn really you could only get from experience. Mm-hmm. And it was a great job. It was a great experience. The further I get away from it, the more fondly I look back on it, because it was an opportunity that I don't think I made the most of. I didn't. But I wouldn't change a thing, because that experience is part of what made me who I am now, as a man, as a coach, as a father, as a husband. All of that is part of my journey. So I embrace it all. I never look at it like I'd like to go back and do something different. Not one bit.
Absolutely. So now you leave there in 2005, and you go to Florida with Billy Donovan for 2 years.
Actually, I left. Yeah,
Virginia. I'm sorry.
I went to Virginia.
Yeah, you went to Virginia for 2 years, and then you went with Billy Donovan for 4 years. Mm-hmm. And now in 2011, you get back with Coach Barnes at the University of Texas. Was that a phone call to Rick and say, hey, listen, I'm ready to come back? Or did he reach out to you and say, listen, I need you back? Like, how did that go when you guys got reunited?
Well, that's a crazy story, because, when I went to Florida in 2007, mm-hmm. That was after, well, if we go back 2006, Billy offered me a job after they won the first national championship. Mm-hmm. And I turned it down because I had just been with Dave for 1 year at University of Virginia. Mm-hmm. And Billy wins the national championship. He offers me the job at Florida. And I didn't really feel like it was right at the time to leave Dave after 1 year, because after I got fired, Dave really was my confidant during that time, because he had went through a similar circumstance at Northeastern where he was there. He went back to UConn. And so he took the DePaul job. And at the time, when I got let go at Siena, Dave was still at DePaul trying to figure out if he wanted to take the Virginia job.
Okay.
So I was talking to Dave daily, and he was talking about this big decision he had to make. And I'm still licking my wounds about being let go at Siena. And he was a guy that really helped me through that. And he takes the Virginia job, and I wind up moving my family to go down with him. And he's like a big brother to me. And so I get down there, and we're building a program. We get to the NIT and setting a foundation and trying to build a culture there. And after that first year, Billy offers me the job, and I just didn't feel comfortable leaving.
Okay.
So I stayed at Virginia for a second year, and another job on the Florida staff opens, and he offers me the job a second time, right? And now he's the hottest dude in the game. He had just won back-to-back championships. I've turned him down once. He's calling me again. Can I say no a second time? And we went down and visited. We had a great experience, and I decided to take the job. And 2 days later, he announces that he's going to the Orlando Magic. That was on a Wednesday. So I'm there. I moved into the new office, and I'm getting settled. He calls a meeting at his house, and we all meet up at his house, and everybody is there, and I don't know anybody. You know, everybody's been a part of these championships, and I'm the new guy who just got there 2 days earlier, and Urban Meyer is there, Jeremy Foley. Urban Meyer's his next door neighbor, and I'm just sitting there like not knowing what's going on. He, on the speakerphone, he speaks to the GM of the Orlando Magic and accepts the job in our presence. Signs a contract while we were there.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. That Friday, he holds a press conference in Orlando, and then a second press conference that afternoon in Gainesville. And the AD has offered the job now to Anthony Grant to come back to Florida. Dave Ladle has offered me to come back to Virginia. And Billy has offered me the opportunity to go with him to the Orlando Magic. I go back to Virginia for the weekend just to be with my family. And on that Sunday, he decides I'm coming back to Florida. So he breaks the contract, and as a part of the penalty for breaking the contract, he's got a 5-year ban. He cannot take an NBA job for a 5-year period for having broken his contract with the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
So that's when Stan Van Gundy takes the job. You know, they had just built a new arena, Dwight Howard, and it was part of me that wanted to go at that point.
Yeah.
So 4 years later, I know that he's going to end up in the NBA at some point. So Rick did say, I need you back. And so I was weighing that out. We had just gotten to the Elite Eight. We got Bradley Beal coming in, the rest of these guys coming back, and we got it rolling now. And Rick's program is in a different place, and we're talking about the possibility of me coming back. And knowing that after another year, Billy will probably end up going back to the NBA, I looked at the Texas situation as one. That's where my son was born, in Austin. I got unbelievable love for Rick and Billy, but I felt like there was more stability back at Texas at that particular time, because I knew after year 5, Billy's band was going to be up. And after having been with him for those 4 years, I was convinced it was a matter of time before he went back to the NBA. And I knew that's not what I wanted. Okay. So I tried to get ahead of that, take advantage of the opportunity to go back to Texas. So that's a long way of answering your question. But
no, it's great. No, and I love the background story, because I knew about, you know, Billy taking the job, then not taking the job, but, you know, obviously not I can go back to Virginia. I was going to go to Orlando with him. Like, this is all good stuff. So I'm definitely, thank you for sharing that with me. So now you're back in Texas with Rick. You guys stay there for another 4 years before you guys go to Tennessee. and in the SEC now. So now we're going from one big name school to another big name school. You know, I've seen Big Ron Slay was on here a little earlier. I don't know if he's still on
Yeah.
here or not.
Oh yeah, my man.
Big fella, yeah, the
Yeah,
big fella.
yeah.
So you know, you
That's
get
family.
down to Tennessee, like so it's like you know, Texas is a football school. You know, Tennessee's a big football school, but Tennessee also has a nice little rich basketball tradition too. You know, the Bernie and Ernie show. We know about the women's program down there. Talk about what it was like going from Texas. How hard was it for you guys to leave Texas and go to Tennessee?
Well, it was hard because I mean we went back to Texas because I wanted to be at Texas. You know, like my son was born there, Austin. I wanted to take my family there. You know, it had a lot to do with that. And loved Austin, loved the state of Texas, man. I think the basketball there, the people throughout the state, like I love Texas. You know, I felt like it was a second home for me. And ironically, you know, being at Florida, you know, we had such a great staff. It was such a great experience being with Billy Donovan. Like, this dude is unbelievable, man. The culture that he has in his program, the way you feel about going to work today and being in the office with Shaka Smart, Larry Shiat, Richard Pitino, Mark Dagnall, Billy Donovan, the ideas, the coaching, the just everything about it was elite, you know, every day. And so, you know, when I considered going to Florida, I mean to Tennessee, I still had some of that bad blood towards Tennessee because you know when I first got to Florida, man, they was killing us. Bruce Pearl had it rolling, and we turned it on them a little bit, but it was a real rivalry. I thought Tennessee had the best home court and the best fans in the SEC. I thought Kentucky had the biggest aura.
Right.
And it was the most elite program. But in terms of like a raucous crowd, and I didn't know whether that was a rivalry thing or that was really the way Tennessee was. But my experience when we went in there, you would walk out and they would be singing Rocky Top. And they had a checkerboard. Yeah. And there was part of me that was hating on them because, you know, it was a rivalry. Yeah. But it was cold now. Like I really was like, yo, this place is crazy. So when we were leaving to go to Tennessee, Shaka was taking over and my family wanted to stay, but I didn't necessarily want to work for Shaka, even though he's my man. And I'm glad he didn't offer me the job because, you know, to be honest, I wouldn't have wanted to stay because of Shaka. I wanted to stay because I wanted to keep my family in Austin. And that wouldn't have been fair to him.
Right. Okay.
He needed somebody that was going to bring an energy to his program that was really all about what he was trying to do. For me, Rick was my guy. Right. And really, I was at a stage in my career where I didn't want to work for anybody else but Rick. So I went to Tennessee, and it didn't really take long to realize that it's a different community. Like, it's the best basketball fan base that I've been around. And, you know, people talk about the difference between a football school, basketball school. I never really looked at it like that. I mean, think about it. Florida, Texas, Tennessee. These are big-time football programs. But of those programs, nobody has a better basketball fan base than Tennessee. The fan base in general for Tennessee athletics is really phenomenal. But in basketball, if you just take basketball alone and don't compare it to anything else on campus, it's one of the best in the country on its own merit. Right. And it is as good a place in the country to win in terms of the community and the fan base. Tennessee was unbelievable, and it's the best fan base that I've ever been a part of. I mean, it is phenomenal.
Nice. And so, you know, last year, you know, we got our first head coaching job at 28, and now we just a tad bit older. You know what I'm saying? And Georgia State comes calling, you know, and now you're the head coach at Georgia State University for the Panthers. Like, talk about, you know, taking that call and the interview process and accepting that job.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming, to be honest with you. You know, these jobs are hard to come by. They're hard to get involved with, and if you're lucky to have one, the best thing to do is do a good job with that one, because getting a second chance is really tough, right?
Absolutely.
So I made these decisions to go to Florida or Texas, Tennessee, with the idea that for the foreseeable future, it's all about the program that I'm in and being an assistant coach. And I really never thought I would get another chance, to be honest with you. So it wasn't my focus. My focus by the time we got to Tennessee was to try my best to make sure we stayed long enough for my kids to finish school and have their own journey and experience. Like I'm talking to you about the Maston Boys and Girls Club and high school and all of this. And so now they're at an age where it's their turn to have that kind of experience and history and a hometown. You know, you're from Long Island and you reflect on those things. And so now if I have to move when my son's a junior, my daughter's, that's tough. So I had no intentions on going anywhere. And we lose to Purdue in Louisville in the Sweet 16 on a Thursday. Friday morning, we're driving back as a family from Louisville to Knoxville. And I get a call, and unfortunately I played it on speakerphone. And on the other end, it says, do you want to talk with the AD and the president from Georgia State on Monday? And I could see my son's eyes in the rearview mirror while I'm driving. He's like, nah, man, we ain't doing that, So I agreed to do it. I convinced my kids they got nothing to worry about. I didn't know that much about Georgia State. I knew that Ron Hunter had done a great job, and I knew Ron a little bit. I knew Lefty Drizel used to be there. I knew it was in downtown Atlanta and that they were winning. So that part was attractive, but I didn't know enough about it to say that, all right, I'm going to uproot my family for this situation, because we had a great situation where we were. So Friday, Saturday goes by, Sunday goes by, and I drive down there on Monday. And I went into the interview with a mindset that I didn't want to waste their time. If the job wasn't going to be a situation where we were going to try to operate at the highest level, then I wasn't going to be interested. And the conversation started that way. And right away, the president and the AD came back at me and convinced me the vision for the program was something that I couldn't turn away from. And so we actually, there was clear that there was a shared vision in the room at that moment. And so now I get out of there and get in the car and call my wife right away and say, yo, this is serious.
Right.
And by the time I got back that night, Monday night, I had an offer and I had a contract on Tuesday, but I hadn't spoken to my kids yet. Okay. So it wound up being a rough emotional time, because I knew it was the right thing for me and my family, but I knew it was going to be hard on them. Yeah. So we worked our way through it. We did it. We uprooted them. That was a long emotional journey there. But my son came down and won. He was coming off a state championship in Tennessee, came down here and won another one. And how many people get to do that, win a state championship in 2 different states? And
right.
My daughter's had a great experience. My wife loves it. We live in the downtown area, and I work with great people. I got unbelievable staff, man. I work, a couple of these guys are on here. I see one of my players on here now too, Big Joe. Like, it's a great situation. I couldn't be more excited, and we got a lot of work to do, but we got to move it in the right direction.
Absolutely. Nah, that's great, man. That's great. So somebody on here asked a question earlier, and you kind of alluded to it now, the toll that coaching can take on a family, you know what I mean? Because you're not just thinking about yourself. Like all these decisions you had, you got to think about your kids and you got to think about your wife. So talk about that for somebody, because I think a lot of people love the idea of coaching, you know what I mean? But when you got a family, you got to really learn how to balance that thing, and you got to take jobs not just predicated on you, but your family as well.
Yeah, it's interesting too because you know, I mean, I got a job, like I said, when I was 21. And so, you know, for the beginning of my career, when I was really truly ambitious, I was single, and I was making all of those decisions about my career really just based on what I wanted. And then right around, you know, 95, you know what I mean? I got the what is it, whip appeal? What was that? You don't know nothing about the baby face.
Yeah,
shit.
man, come on, stop, man. Stop. You try to play. You try to play
Yeah.
me right now.
So, you know, my you know, when me and my wife really got committed to one another, then obviously things changed at that time. And you know, she was in residency. She was working on a medical career. And so, you know, this was something that we, you know, I've always felt this, T, you know, for any young coaches that's listening, like, I feel like anytime you're in a committed relationship and you get involved with any kind of job as a coach now, a job interview or anything, even if you don't get the job, if you've got a good relationship and you communicate well, it makes you closer. Because, you know, like me and you've been talking about what you want to do with this, because this is a great thing you got going, right? And anytime your wheels start turning about where you want to take something, it's a different energy, right? And when you're in a relationship and a job opportunity presents itself, you got to start thinking about what you want. And if you're with someone, you have to think about what you want together. And you start talking about your aspirations and sharing that energy with one another. And when you both support one another, even if you don't get the job, it just creates a dialogue and an energy that's healthy for a relationship, I feel. And so we've been connected, my wife and I, every time we've gone through this, we've been on the same page together. And so, so we were prepared when the kids came into it, because her and I were always in lockstep on things. And so as a result of that, it was easy to do what was to consider what was best for the kids, because we were in it together. And that's the challenge is more about the relationship that you have, not the coaching profession, but the relationship itself. And if you really got somebody that's in it with you, you can navigate this stuff. But if y'all really not connected, then this can create some problems for you.
Absolutely. Nah, I appreciate you saying that. So as head coach, you walk into the situation. What's the first thing that you say to the team when you huddle up for that first time as a coach? Like, what's the first thing they heard from Coach Rob Lanier?
Well, you know, when you do these interviews and stuff, you wind up talking to them, you know, like almost before the press conference, before it's official, you know. And, you know, I've been in that situation as a player, recruited by one guy, played for another, then played for another. And so I sat in their shoes. And, you know, I think the big thing, whether it's the first time you talk to them or whenever, is always being honest. And being, you know, I'm probably a little bit more transparent than most. But you know, I talk to them about my experience and understanding that, you know, I think every year when there's all these coaching changes going on, the kids kind of get caught in the middle of the narrative, because there's always this talk about who the players belong to, you know. And I try to make it clear to these guys that it's not about who recruited you. It's not about you being my players or someone else's players. We're going to do things differently as a program. And if you buy into what we're doing, then you're one of us. And if you don't, then we're going to help you move on.
Right.
But it's not about, you know, because then what happens is if the coach comes in and wins, they say, well, he won with someone else's guys. And then if the coach come in and he stumbles a little bit, they blame him. Well, when he gets his own guys, he's going to be all right. And the bottom line is, it's more about if the guys are doing the right things and they're working hard, they're your guys, and you're going to live with them and you're going to go with them. And the fact of the matter is, some of the guys I love the most over the years when I've been in this were guys that, like Admiral Schofield was a great leader in our program at Tennessee. We didn't recruit him. We didn't recruit him. And you know what? We ain't who we became without him. So it don't matter who recruited him. He was our guy.
He was
what
tough.
I mean? So yeah, that was the first message I wanted to get across to our guys. You see my man Isaiah Taylor jumped in. That's my man right there, and Carl Brown. Some family coming in here right now, man. This is
absolutely good. Not. You bringing them out tonight, man. I appreciate that. So let's talk about Coaches Speak. You know what I mean, and this platform that you've created for people, which I think is phenomenal. Like, you know what I mean? Like, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Back in 2017, me and a brother by the name of Clay Dade. I don't know if you know Clay.
Yeah, Clay. He had the All-American camps down in Georgia.
Yeah. He used to have All-American camps. He used to have the unsigned senior camps. And he always had all of these things going to try to promote, players and events and stuff. And he's an entrepreneur. And so what he called me, and we would always have these, this dialogue about coaching, about, it's particularly for African American coaches and the opportunities and how to make the most of them, et cetera. And so he and I had decided we were going to start an organization. We came up with a name for it. We met in Atlanta, and he did a lot of groundwork, and we had an unbelievable meeting. I would say 25, 30 coaches showed up, and we had Carl Hobbs, Leonard Hamilton. We had athletic directors. It was an unbelievable meeting. And I came into this thing with all of this passion about how we're going to come together. And what I wanted to do at the time is I wanted the organization to serve as a nurturing organization for young coaches, to help develop young coaches, but also to be able to identify the great young African American coaches. What I wanted to do was be a resource, because again, like I said, I didn't see myself as being a head coach again, but I wanted to be a resource for search firms and administrators that we knew who the best young guys were, and that they could call me and I could tell you, here's the next guy, here's the next Shaka Smart, here's the next. I wanted to have an organization that we really tried to help guys in that way. And so I stood in front and I told these guys, and we really developed a real energy in this meeting. And then after we finished, everybody was like, okay, man, I love what you're saying. What we going to do next? And I really didn't know. I didn't know what to do next. I mean, it was a great idea. But as I was saying that, I threw out the ideas that, well, we got to develop a web presence, like a social media presence or something where we can connect. But all of these guys who were bought into this message that I was preaching, I really didn't have anything tangible for them.
Right.
And in June, I sat in my kitchen. I had saw a commercial for GoDaddy.com.
Okay.
By midnight that night, I had put up my first post on the website.
Okay.
And what I wanted to do, in lieu of really taking this organization this grand idea I had about an organization, I wanted to create a platform for coaches to tell their stories and tell their words and put their own thoughtfulness and competence on display, so that when they do tell their stories, people can come to that page and see, man, Coach Terrell Dozier, he's a sharp, thoughtful dude. And without saying, look at me, and without necessarily bragging about themselves, share their perspectives, their stories, their expertise in a way that does that for them. And, Billy Donovan, Rick Barnes, those guys, they got ESPN as a platform, or Sports Illustrated, whatever they want, because they have the stature. But the average guy like Kamani Young and Terrence Rencher, they don't have those platforms. So I was trying to create a platform for them that would give them the opportunity to create their own narratives and tell their own stories, and to really put on display how sharp these dudes are without them necessarily saying, look at how sharp I am. Because when you interview, you got to go in there and talk about yourself. So I didn't want it to be about that. I think, Terrell, and just think about what you do. Like, you've had Book on here. Like, I think coaches are some of the most interesting, talented, passionate people who are great storytellers. So in the same vein as the Players Tribune, I wanted them to have a platform to tell their stories in their own words.
Right. Now it makes a lot of sense, and I think it is a great platform. Anybody want to know about it? It's coachespeak.net.
Coachspeak.net.
Coachspeak.net. Go check it out. Go read the stories on there for sure. I've gone on there and they're great. So, Coach, as we come on the back side of this, I want to hit you with some questions, and you let me know. All right.
All right.
So first thing I need to know is the toughest place for you that you've ever had to coach.
Oh man. Well, I mean, there's two that come to mind when you ask that question. You know, now I was in the Atlantic 10 at a time when the Atlantic 10 was rough. Calipari, Cheney, Mike Jarvis, Skip Prosser. I mean, it was rough. Phil Martelli, and a lot of times back then in the Atlantic 10, there was some smaller arenas like St. Joe's, bandbox.
Yeah.
But when I was I don't know if you've ever seen Oklahoma State now, but they've expanded that arena. But when I was in the Big 12, the first go round, it was only 7,000. It was the loudest place that I had ever experienced to that point, right? And at that time, you know, you played 16 conference games, so you didn't play everyone twice. So my first year at Texas, it was that spot. My second year, Kansas, man, that's
yeah, fog, baby.
Yeah, that's the best. It's the loudest, and just the whole thing was just unbelievable, man. That place is the best in college basketball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nah, I like that. So all these years of coaching, man, this dude on the other side, we done went through the scouting report. We put a good game plan together, but this dude is busting our ass. We call a timeout. We yelled at whoever was guarding him. We made the adjustments, and he's still busting our ass. Who was that player?
Oh, man. As a coach, man, there's some dudes, man. But one year at Virginia, J.J. Redick, we were at Duke, and it's really just the way you described it. It's like every time out, should we double team him? Should we switch everything? But you know, when you start trying to double team somebody at Duke, they got four other guys out there that can play. But that jumps out right away. Again, when you go back to the Atlantic 10, man, like, I don't know if you know some of these names. I mean, Tyson Wheeler was so cold.
Yes, he was.
You know what I mean? Like, he was a dude like that. I could run down a bunch of names in the Atlantic 10, just in the Atlantic 10, because it was such a hard-nosed league with great guards, right? But if there's one performance I think of Redick, because he had 45 at Cameron Indoor, and it seemed like there was nothing we could do. That he was one of those guys, when he got hot, there was really nothing you could do about it.
Right. Nah, no question. And then my last question. You're the head coach. You got 3 assistants. And them 3 assistants, now this we talking hypothetically, your 3 assistants are any 3 coaches all time that you can have. Who would those 3 coaches be, and what would their role be on your staff?
Yeah, you talked about this, full disclosure, so I have to preface this, because you know, just the idea of having these guys sitting next to me like is crazy, right? But you know, as a young coach, even as a young player, the coach that I looked at and admired the most was John Chaney. You know, again, because I played in the Atlantic 10, and we played them twice a year for 4 years. And you know, like if you ask me who could I go play for if I had a choice, like I always had this admiration for him, not knowing him, but the whole aura associated with John Chaney was something that I really admired. At one point, he said something nice about me after one of our games in the paper. I cut it out and kept it just because it was coming from him. You know, so that, you know, to have his presence next to me, that would be awesome. And in that same vein, but to a lesser degree, I didn't identify with him the same way because I looked at it more from afar because I didn't get to compete against him like I did against Temple's teams. But John Thompson, you know, there was an aura about these two men that really sparked my interest in wanting to be a coach because these guys were real difference makers. And there wasn't many of us in the game at that time. And really, if there were assistants, there was only one on the staff. Yeah. So to turn on the TV and see the presence of these guys, and you probably seen the 30 for 30 Requiem for the Big East. You know, anybody who's listening right now who hasn't seen that, if you are a basketball fan, just go watch it. Just as a if you love the game, just it's a great document of the history of that conference. And you know, lastly, you know, because I spent so much time with Rick Barnes and I got so much respect for him, you know, I would want to be around he, and obviously Billy's such a great offensive coach. So I would throw another guy in there just to get him on the bench with us. But
you can have them all. Somebody got to be the ops, right? Somebody got to be the ops.
That's right. But those are the guys that come to mind just in terms of admiration and respect, and in particular Thompson and Chaney. Those guys are, you know, guys that I've always looked up to.
Nah, absolutely, man. Nah, that's a great list, man. So
my sister just came on here too. Love you, Angel. Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? So we're going to wrap this thing up right now, but you know, I always appreciate the conversations that we have on the phone. I've appreciated all the knowledge that you've given me in this short time. You know what I mean? I built some good relationships during this quarantine time, and you definitely become, like I said, a mentor to me, and I appreciate all the love.
Thanks,
you see the hat, but I'm going to let you know, you see the hat that I got on tonight. So I'm going to need that Georgia State Panther T-shirt to go with my Under Armour hat.
All right.
So I'm going to make sure I get that, you know what I mean? So I can rep the Panthers now. That's my Sunbelt team now. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate you, Coach, man, and we'll talk soon.
My man, appreciate you, brother. Doing great things, man. I love it.
Appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.